Hard conversations in leadership are everywhere. I'm Jen Whitmer, and I help teams and leaders have solve conflict and personality clashes. And today I am so excited because I am joined with my friend Jess. And so she is here and she's going to join us live. She is an amazing educational leader coming out, and she's been so gracious to come on live with us. And we're just going to spend some time answering questions about what is it like to have hard conversations in leadership. Yay, you're
Yay,
here.
hi, nice to see you.
It's nice to see you too. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
Well, everybody who is here in the chat, I'm so glad that you're here. If you've got questions while we're talking, please pop them in the chat and we will make sure that we run through them over the next few minutes. I'm just so glad that you are here and we got this to work out. So Jess had to school me in time zones where she lives. It changes. I get so confused. So we're here at the same time.
Arizona doesn't change time, but yet we're not always in the same time zone. So I don't know.
I'm just so glad that we worked it out and we're here at the same time. It makes me really happy.
It's perfect.
Fantastic. Well, why don't you introduce yourself to the people and let them know a little bit about who you are and what you're doing?
Okay. Hi, guys. I am Jess, and I'm super excited to be with you tonight. I am a startup school principal. So I was a principal for 4 years at a charter high school, and now I am a startup principal, which means that we are building a school in a pandemic from the ground up, which is super crazy and exciting all at the same time. And I am writing a book on crisis leadership for school leaders. So my book is titled Premeditated Crisis Leadership, and it is all about really being proactive and building a healthy school culture that allows us to be interdependent on one another when a crisis strikes. So I'm super thankful to be here because I have hard conversations all the time.
Yeah, all the time. I just have to say, Jess also isn't the school leader in the principal's office all the time? Because today she was moving fencing.
I was.
You're out there. You're doing the things. Well, here's one of the things I love about following you. Even though I'm no longer in educational leadership, I, dearly remember those days. And the transferable skills of leadership anywhere is so, it's just completely transferable. There's no great end to that sentence. So, but the thing that I love about what you do is that you talk a lot about how you build a culture and how that starts with you, the leader. So tell me a little bit about how you came to that idea and how that plays out in your leadership.
So I really think of an organizational leader, whether you're inside or outside of a school org, as really being the culture director of your organization. If you are not getting your hands dirty in the culture of your school, how can you possibly lead well? Right? How can you possibly be effective if you're not just entrenched in it? And, I had a bomb threat on day 4 of my very first principalship ever. So if that doesn't just entrench you in the systems and processes and response mode of your organization, then I don't know what does. So I have been incredibly interested in school culture and how it responds to a crisis pretty much from the first day of my principalship. So I just really started reflecting on what kind of culture does it take to survive when you just find yourself in the thick of it, which honestly for leaders right now is on a daily basis. So how are we creating a culture that thrives, not just survives what happens to us each day?
Yeah, I love that so much because it's the proactive piece of it is so important. And just to broaden that out, that is in really all of our relationships. When we face a crisis, we actually know what's underneath us. And so if we're actively looking to build what's underneath us, and specifically what I've been talking about a lot recently is communication skills. How do I build those communication skills outside of the hard conversation? So when the hard conversation comes up, I've already got a little bit of a muscle for that. I've been thinking about running a Couch to 5K again recently, and there's no way the 5K is happening unless I do a Couch to 5K. I can't just go out and run the 5K. I mean, I could at a time. that time is not now. And so the process of building and becoming aware of where are my skills? What do I need to build when it's not a crisis, when it's not the end goal, is super important. So one of the things I would love for you to share, and I didn't tell you this, so if you don't have a story off the top of your head, it's totally fine. But I'd love for you to share just a story of what does that look like for you as a leader? What does it mean to build culture? Because I was just saying this today, a culture is not a Sunday bar. I mean, I love it. It's not a cool desk. That's not culture. So what do you do to build those type of good communication skills? So when the crisis happens. Okay, I'm back. I don't know what happened.
I think I got your question. So I'm going to go back to the word premeditated, because I think that leadership and crisis leadership has to be premeditated. And what I mean by that is that it has to be very strategic and very intentional. It's not going to happen unless you pay attention to it. So what was really important for me from the very beginning of my leadership was, how do I get in front of as many people as possible on a daily basis so that they see me present and visible and with them, even if I can't physically be with them. So for me, that started with some communication structures. I always sent out a Monday memo. Here's what's on the docket for the week. Here's what's important Monday through Friday. And then here are some nuts and bolts that we should pay attention to as an organization. And then by Friday, I did a little recap in my Friday focus. And that was all about the culture. What have we survived? Where have we thrived this week? Just kind of like, who are we and how are we doing as an organization? And then go rest and be well this weekend. So those two structures, as simple as they were, my staff could always depend on Monday morning, this memo is in my inbox and I know what to anticipate. And on Friday, I'm going to get a send off into my weekend with just like that question that I need to think about or reflect on, or that like celebration that I get to carry with me into the weekend. And so for me, it's all about intentionally planning structures that allow us to thrive, because then in crisis, guess what? I still have my Monday memo and I still have my Friday focus, which became increasingly important when I couldn't be in person with my staff. But it was, to your point, it was a muscle. I already knew how to do it. I already had it built into my routine and my staff expected it. And so we never really missed a beat with each other, even though we couldn't be in person learning as we traditionally did.
I love that. And I'm just going to draw the really great nugget that everybody can use out of this.
Yeah.
It was a routine.
Mm-hmm.
So the fewer decisions we have to make, the better.
Yep.
We make, I don't know how many decisions a day. Everybody quotes the stat. I can never remember. It's in the thousands. I don't care. It's too many.
Yep.
And so when you have a rhythm and a routine of communicating regularly, it changes how the conversations go. So one of the things that we work really hard at our house, it is never 100% perfect, but running a household of 6 people is a little bit crazy town sometimes. And so we on Sunday nights really have what we call the calendar committee meeting. And it used to be just me and my husband, but now it really involves all the kids, because we've got, well, one's at college, but one can't drive and has all the activities. One can drive, has just as many activities. One cannot drive, has a few, like, and it's who can go where when. But when we miss that, there is always more conflict. Always, always, every single time. And it comes back to the, when you lose that routine, then your communication suffers later.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lack of clarity, there's lack of context, all of those things happen. So that's a home example, a work example, but that is an important communication tool for all of us to remember. What is my regular touch point with somebody? And what does it look like? I love it.
Absolutely. And I think, to your point, when people know what to expect from us, it eases the burden that we have, like the pressure that we have to perform, and it eases their burden of, you know, something unexpectedly coming up and throwing off their routine. It's just a respect it's respect for one another's humanity, especially in the times that we're living in right now, because nobody needs one more thing to throw them off their game, right?
Exactly. My shoelaces are enough. Like, I don't need
Yeah,
anything
right?
else. Anything else. So one of the things I would love to just dig into a little bit. So as an Enneagram coach, I'm always interested from an Enneagram lens when we look at communication. So Jess is an Enneagram 3, which is this fantastic motivational figure, getting things done, taking names, making things happen. And that communication style tends to be quite direct, bulleted, here's the points, underline, and we're out. How has that served you well? And where have you had to adjust that style?
So that's a great question. And by the way, I used to think that I was an Enneagram 7 like you because I wanted to be super fun and just like
You
go with the
are fun.
flow.
You're wearing
Okay.
pencil earrings.
Okay.
You're way
Yes,
more
I
fun than I am
do.
right
I
now.
do. Hazel and Ollie, they're from Kansas City, so they're amazing. They're on Instagram. But with that being said, I think where the communication serves me well is that I can communicate what people need to know in a short amount of time, but I was also blessed with the gift of writing. So I can make it, I can be direct and it doesn't feel threatening and it doesn't feel demeaning. My directness is empowering, I think, for the most part. And if I do have to be direct and it's with a purpose and people know like, oh, I need to pay attention to this, so I think it served me well because I get to the point, but I've never lost my humanity because I can sit with people's pain points. And that is, I think that's important in our communication, understanding our audience and how they need us to care for them through our words.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the modules in my course that is out there, if you all want to get it, it's called How to Have Hard Conversations. That's the theme of the week. But one of the modules is really understanding how other people feel. Like I'm teaching you, how do you ask those questions so you get it? And for those of us who don't love sitting in other people's pain, learning how to do that a little bit and why that's so valuable. Because I mean, Maya Angelou is quoted all the time, but it is because it is true. People will forget what you say, but they won't forget how you made them feel. And they have to own those feelings. And there's a whole bunch of mix in there. But in general, how we communicate through emotions is incredibly important. So I love that that's part of how you have learned how to do that. So when you think about what was the biggest hard conversation, conflict resolution skill that you really had to learn, like from your early times as a school leader till now? What's the thing that you're like, this little skill really, really helped me?
This is going to sound silly, but I think we have a tendency to hide behind our devices and to send an email or send a text rather than pick up the phone and call or sit down and have the conversation face to face. And that face to face communication is so critical, especially when it's limited. And people feel so much value. Like instead of firing off an email from my office, if I get up and walk to a teacher's classroom and sit down and spend time with them, I think they feel safer. They feel more secure and we're able to have a more open and honest conversation rather than a text message that's like, hey, can you pop up and come see me? And now they're like, what do you need to see me about? What's going on? What did I do? Or an email where tone can be misconstrued. I think we just hide behind our devices, and I have found true value in let's sit down and just human to human have a conversation about what's going on.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like, I'm not going to stand, but I should, because it's such a great point that we think sometimes, oh, it'll be clearer if I send it in an email, but typically it's not, because we're missing so many components of communication. We're missing body language, we're missing vocal tone, we're missing how someone is perceiving us, like the feedback that you get physically. so many things. So I love that getting up and going to the classroom. And I am sure, at least one of the lessons I learned when I was a school leader is that when you make that a regular basis and they know every time you come into their room isn't because you're checking up on them, you're
Yep.
just there with them, you interact with the kids, you don't mess up the lesson, like you're just there and you're present. Whenever you have that conversation, it doesn't seem like, oh my gosh, they're in there, I'm in trouble. I mean, there's always that element of the teacher, if your boss is in the room, but the more you're there, that presence changes how all the communication happens. So love that. I love that. So I would love for you to tell us a little bit about your book that's coming out and when it is coming out. Because I was so excited when I realized that my course was launching a couple weeks before your book and that we could do something really fun together. Because I would love to introduce you to my people, because I think this book is going to be, I know it's for educational leaders, but I think it's going to be really valuable to people outside of the education world too.
Well, I appreciate your vote of confidence, because I have a groundbreaking ceremony for my school on Friday. I'm trying to launch this book. It's holiday. I don't know what I'm doing in my life right now or why everything is culminating at the same time, but that's how God wants it. So that's what we're doing. So, but my book, yes.
It just kind of happens sometimes.
Yes. Yep. Just, this is what we're doing. And now I'm too far in it to escape. So here we are. But my book is launching December 11th. It is titled Premeditated Crisis Leadership, a how-to guide for school leaders. And we mentioned this just kind of briefly at the beginning of our chat, but I'm really focusing on proactive crisis leadership. How do you build the culture of your organization or of your school so that when a crisis strikes, you already have the systems and the processes and, most importantly, the trust and the interdependent teams in place so that you don't even have to worry about it, right? I know who my go-to people are. They know when to step up and how to step up and support. And I have found that we survived a bomb threat that way. We survived a pandemic that way. We survived a student death that way. I mean, we did life together really hard in my first principalship, but it never felt overwhelming to me. And I never felt like I wanted to withdraw from it because I had the support and I trusted my teams. So even when it was hard, there were still elements that were a lot of fun in the hard. So the book is about that. I talk very briefly about in crisis, what happens to our bodies, what happens to our minds, what happens to our souls, when we're in the moment. And then I talk about preventative rhythms of work and rest and how we can really build our capacity to lead outside of a crisis so that when that crisis strikes, to your point earlier, we already have the rhythms and routines in place that will help sustain us.
I am so excited about it. I can't wait to get it. So I know it's coming out in December. Can people pre-order it now? Is that allowed?
Not just yet. So pre-ordering, I am hoping for Black Friday. Hoping for Black Friday.
All right. Well, you have to follow Jess. And
yes. Follow me.
Too. So make sure you follow her, especially if you're in any kind of education. You have to follow her. But if you're any kind of leader, especially if you are leading, I feel like schools often run this great nonprofit small business mix. They're not a huge organization and they're all part of a larger district, but each individual school has its own special thing. And that is how a principal, as you said, can proactively, these are the words, proactively create a culture that is healthy for the principal and for the teachers. And that is built in how the leader interacts. And so I just really appreciate you coming and talking about communication and how you have grown in that and sharing some of your stories and giving us a really great tip about not hiding behind our devices. I love it.
Yes.
I love it.
It's so easy to do, but it's so important to not.
I know. It's so simple. It's so simple. We could talk about that for another 30 minutes. But I am so grateful for your time. And so make sure you be looking for her book that's coming out. Say the title one more time.
Premeditated Crisis Leadership, a how-to guide for school leaders.
There we go. And if you would love how to have hard conversations, it's an online course. It's available now. You can go to the link in my bio, which if you're watching live, I think is over here. Or you can go to jenwhitmer.com/hard hard conversation. So I'm so excited to have you on. Thank you for spending your time with us.
Thank you, Jen. It was so good to spend time with you today. Thank you.
Absolutely. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.